Welcome back. We are now in part 7 of the full lawsuit readout. Let's get right back into it. During one faculty meeting, a discussion concerning Koberger took up most of the time because he was highly problematic. Concern was expressed about Koberger's behavior around women, including that he was aggressive towards women and made them feel uncomfortable. The WSU faculty discussed if or how they could intervene. One WSU professor warned her colleagues at that meeting that Koberger was a predator. Quote, "He is smart enough that in 4 years we will have to give him a PhD. Mark my word, I work with predators. If we give him a PhD, that's the guy that in that many years when he is a professor, we will hear is harassing, stalking, and sexually abusing his students at wherever university he ended." End quote. That WSU professor also believed that Koberger was already stalking people. Koberger's supervising instructor at WSU, however, was concerned that removing Koberger from employment with WSU would open the university up to a civil lawsuit from Koberger. Despite numerous complaints about Koberger's behavior from students, faculty, and staff, WSU failed to properly and adequately intervene or take steps to mitigate and prevent further threatening, dangerous, and predatory behavior by Koberger. WSU had actual knowledge of significant problematic and dangerous behavior that should have caused WSU to perform a formal and comprehensive threat assessment on Koberger. For example, WSU did provide safety escorts to concerned staff and students, evidencing its awareness of the significant danger that Koberger posed to the Pullman-Moscow community. There is no indication, however, that WSU used its TAT to conduct a threat assessment of Koberger or that it employed any of the potential interventions recommended by its Waiver 21 protocols. Had WSU's TAT conducted a proper and comprehensive threat assessment, it would have readily identified that Koberger prominently displayed nearly every red flag that Waiver 21 warns about. For instance, a proper threat assessment would have found, among other things, that Koberger had characteristics associated with a heightened risk for violence, including anger problems, lack of empathy, and a strong sense of entitlement. A proper threat assessment would have shown other recognized serious warning signs for violence, including but not limited to that Koberger was engaging in stalking and menacing behavior that was escalating and instilling extreme fear in his female victims, that he was having increasing conflict with professors and colleagues, that he was having increasing problems with his work performance, that he was autistic and sexually frustrated, that he was preoccupied with violent homicidal fantasies, sexual burglary, and serial killers, that he was in possession of a K-bar military-style hunting knife, that he was using WSU's ResNet internet network for improper purposes, such as troubling searches and stalking and planning his attack and murder of descendants, and that he had photos of WSU and University of Idaho female undergraduate students on his cell phone. Had WSU performed a proper threat assessment, it would have determined that Koberger possessed an extremely high and imminent risk of violence. A proper threat assessment would have required that WSU identify likely targets of any possible violence that Koberger might commit, including by examination of his cell phone, computers, internet search history, and an inspection and search of his university-supplied apartment and office. A proper threat assessment would have required that WSU identify potential triggering events that could cause Koberger to commit violence. A proper threat assessment also would have required that WSU identify steps that could be taken to manage and mitigate Koberger's risk for violence. There is no indication that WSU's CCR office conducted a proper, comprehensive, or timely investigation into the more than a dozen formal complaints made about Koberger. There is no indication that WSU did any of these things. Instead, for months, it continued in a state of organizational and bureaucratic paralysis, while continuing to employ Koberger as a teaching assistant, continuing to provide Koberger with housing, health benefits, free tuition, free internet access, continuing to pay Koberger a salary, and continuing to provide Koberger with academic studies focused on criminal behavior that fed his preoccupation and obsession with sexual assault and mass unaliving. Koberger commits mass unaliving, which was foreseeable to WSU. On the weekend, immediately following the November 8th, 2022 discrimination and harassment training, Koberger commits mass unaliving, which was foreseeable to WSU. In the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, while he was still employed by and enrolled at WSU, Koberger stared through the back window of a home at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, the King Road residence, immediately adjacent to the University of Idaho. Koberger, masked and dressed in all black, entered the King Road residence by slipping through a sliding glass door at the back of the home. Kaylee was heard to frantically yell in fear, quote, "Someone's here." Koberger was heard to say, quote, "It's okay, Kaylee. I'm here for you." Using a military-style K-bar knife, Koberger then violently stabbed to death 4 victims that were later identified by police as Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan. Below is a photograph of the victims taken only a matter of hours before their unalivings. The victims were all undergraduate students at the University of Idaho. Police found defensive knife wounds on both Xana and Madison's hands. Kaylee was unrecognizable as her facial structure was extremely damaged. 2 other female residents of the King Road residence survived the encounter. A surviving 19-year-old resident of the King Road residence reported to police that before the unalivings, Kaylee had seen a shadowy figure watching her from the tree line at the back of the residence, which freaked her out. Kaylee had also told her family and roommates about a stalker in Moscow, Idaho that had followed her to her car. The 19-year-old resident of the King Road residence also reported to police that she and another roommate were often, quote, freaked out at the home because they felt there was someone watching them from outside the back window. During the time of the unalivings, the 19-year-old resident heard Kaylee crying and Koberger telling Kaylee that he was there for her. On November 13th, 2022, and in the days following, both WSU and the University of Idaho sent alerts to their students and staff about the unalivings and potential ongoing risk. After the quadruple unalivings, but before Koberger was identified as a suspect, Koberger's supervising instructor at WSU considered the possibility that Koberger had committed the unalivings. Similarly, fellow WSU graduate students also immediately thought Koberger committed the unalivings. Koberger's office mate and fellow teaching assistant employed by WSU observed a large scratch on Koberger's face, which looked like scratches from fingernails. Other members of the WSU criminology program also observed wounds on Koberger's hands following the unalivings. None of members of the WSU criminology program, however, notified law enforcement about Koberger's behavior or their suspicions about his potential involvement in the unalivings. Video evidence led by the Moscow, Idaho Police Department to believe that a white Hyundai Elantra may have been involved in the murders. On November 25th, 2022, the Moscow Police Department asked the Pullman, Moscow area law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for a white Hyundai Elantra. In response to this request, on November 29th, 2022, WSU police officer Daniel Tiango searched a WSU database for white Elantras registered with WSU and identified a 2015 white Elantra with a Pennsylvania license plate registered to Koberger, residing at 1630 Northeast Valley Road, apartment 201, Pullman, Washington. No apparent action was taken by WSU at this time. 1630 Northeast Valley Road is an apartment complex that houses WSU graduate students and is referred to as Steptoe Village. WSU owns and operates Steptoe Village and had provided Koberger with a residence there as part of his employment with the university. On that same day, November 29th, 2022, at approximately 1 a.m., WSU police officer Curtis Whitman was searching for any white Hyundai Elantras and located a 2015 white Elantra in a parking lot at 1630 Northeast Valley Road. This car had a Washington license plate, but it was also registered to Koberger. No apparent action was taken by WSU at this time. The 2022 fall term then ended in mid-December, and Koberger promptly returned back to his family home in Pennsylvania. Only after the unalivings and after the semester had concluded did WSU make the belated decision to terminate Koberger's teaching assistantship. cut Koberger's funding, and remove him from the graduate program. As part of its ongoing investigation into Koberger, the Moscow Police Department obtained Koberger's cell phone records in an effort to determine if Koberger stalked any of the Schmurder victims prior to the killings or conducted surveillance on the King Road residence. A subsequent examination of Koberger's cell phone confirmed that he was stalking female students at both WSU and the University of Idaho, with dozens of photos of students, many in bathing suits. Koberger's cell phone records also revealed that he had been in the area of the King Road residence on at least 12 occasions prior to November 13, 2022. All but one of these occasions occurred in the middle of the night. On one occasion, Koberger was seen in the area of the King Road residence on August 21, 2022 from approximately 10:30 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. On December 30th, 2022, Koberger was arrested for burglary and 4 counts of murder at his family's residence in Pennsylvania. Also, on December 30th, 2022, WSU issued a press release regarding Koberger's arrest in connection with the quadruple murders. In the press release, WSU's chancellor and provost stated that, quote, "This horrific act has shaken everyone in the Palouse region." She further stated that we also want to extend our deepest sympathies to the families, friends, and University of Idaho Vandal colleagues who were impacted by these murders. We will long feel the loss of these young people in the Moscow Pullman community, and hope the announcement today will be a step toward healing. The press release further indicated that Koberger had completed his first semester as a PhD student in WSU's criminal justice program earlier that month. On December 31st, 2022, WSU served a belated trespass admonition on Koberger signed by the WSU Chief of Police, Gary Jenkins, which provided, and they have the admonition here, and basically the admonition, it's a trespass that says it's to inform you that you've been trespassed from all areas of Washington State University campuses. This includes all buildings, sidewalks, breezeways, courtyards, access roads, and parking lots, and any other Washington State University campus property. This admonition is effective immediately and will continue until pending student conduct charges have been resolved and you've been given permission in writing to return to campus. Trespass means that your privilege to be on or in the areas listed above has been revoked or denied by Washington State University. If you are found in the areas listed above in violation of this admonition, or if at the conclusion of an investigation it is determined you were actually in or on the areas listed above in violation of this admonition, you will be subject to arrest and prosecution for criminal trespass. If you have a legitimate business need with Washington State University, you must be escorted by an official with Washington State University, and arrangements for such escort must be made prior to you entering the areas listed above. This means you have to make arrangements with WSU police before coming on campus for any reason. After being served with the admonition, Koberger signed an acknowledgement. And he just signed acknowledging that I've read the foregoing trespass admonition and notice, and it shows who delivered that, and that was for December 31st, 2022. As part of their investigation, law enforcement took into evidence several electronic devices possessed by Koberger, including a laptop computer, desktop computer, hard drives, and a cell phone. As set forth above, one of the amenities that WSU provided to Koberger at his apartment in Steptoe Village was free internet access, both wired and wireless, through WSU's ResNet internet network. Forensic examination of Koberger's devices revealed an alarming and menacing history of internet use. Koberger had performed many internet searches regarding home invasions, burglary, co-ed unalivings, and serial killers. For example, Koberger had researched a serial killer named Danny Rolling. Rolling, known as the Gainesville Ripper, murdered 5 college students and became the inspiration of the slasher film Scream. In the middle of the night, Rolling entered a college apartment through a sliding glass door, masked and dressed in all black, and STABBED'd his female victims to death using a K-bar knife. Chilling facts suggesting that Koberger murdered his victims in a copycat fashion. That's going to end it for part 7 right here. I will see you over in part 8. If you haven't yet, please just help out my channel by making sure you tap the follow button, like, comment, share.